Hi, and welcome to High Street Matters, an original podcast series from Bira, the British Independent Retailers Association. I'm Jeff Moody, and today we're discussing what independent retailers really need to see from our new Prime Minister, Andy Burnham, and also what Bira is asking of him as he sets out his new early priorities. Joining me today, I have three guests: Andrew Goodacre, the CEO of Bira; Surinder Josan, who's the past president of Bira and is the owner of All Seasons DIY in Smethwick. And we also have John Jones, who's the current president of Bira and managing partner of Philip Morris and Sons in Hereford. Andrew, Surinder and John, thank you very much for joining me. So Andrew, let's start with the bigger picture. How would you describe the last few years for independent retailers in terms of business rates, cost and government support?
Hi, Jeff. Well, it's certainly not been boring, has it? We've gone through a COVID period. We've gone through a war in Europe and a cost of living crisis. And now we have USA and Iran at war. So all those events, none of which we're in our control, seriously impact on the UK economy. And independent retailers have not escaped that impact. I think we've seen a significant rise in the cost of doing business. This Prime Minister has already set his stall out to be a man who tackles the cost of living crisis on behalf of the general public. I think he also needs to look at what he can do for independent retailers and high street businesses in general, because our costs have also increased. We've got a bit of a crisis going on in that respect. And we also have to live with the reality that in just the past 2 years, in 2024, there was £2.5 billion worth of government support injected into reducing business rates. That has been reduced in 2 years to 900 million. So it's just almost a third of what we used to have in 2 years. That's all we have in terms of that support. And that's being felt across the whole sector.
Great. So Surinder, you've been trading through a lot of this already as owner of All Seasons DIY, but you've also seen it from the perspective of being a past Bira president. In your opinion, has anything genuinely improved, or do you think, in your experience, it's gone backwards as well?
Hi, Jeff. Yeah, sure. As Andrew's mentioned, we've suffered a cost of living crisis, but not only from the consumer point of view, our own cost of running a business has gone up drastically. And the compounding effect of that inevitably is that we're going to lose retailers. That means that the mix of what we're offering on the high street has gone down. Us personally, our costs have gone up. But in addition to that, we're also noticing that as consumers try to make ends meet, there's some of them who want to just, should we say, steal things, and so the cost of shop theft has gone up.
Yeah.
And then in line with that, because some people haven't got much to do, they can't afford to go on holiday, they can't afford to do this and that, afford to eat out, so they're, shall we say, go towards antisocial behaviour. So all these things have an impact on retail.
Right, that's a worrying situation. And in terms of John, your experience at Philip Morris and Son, do you see any pressures easing, or is it mostly continue to build also?
No, I don't think it's anything easing at all. It's more a sort of constant drip of more and more challenges. There's all the things that Surinder's mentioned, largely around costs and behaviours and so on, and also the regulatory burden and legislation that's making it more difficult, employers' rights bill, that sort of thing. And what I think we see is, rather than anything improving, those things cumulatively making it more and more difficult. And so the sense of disillusionment amongst high street retailers is growing. Even for those that have still got viable businesses, there's an increasing sense of it's just not worth it. It's just too difficult. There's just too many issues adding up. And so retailers really are quite disillusioned.
Okay. So if I come back to you, Andrew, one of Andy Burnham's first policies coming in as Prime Minister was to announce a 20% reduction in business rates for pubs, clubs and live music venues. What's your reaction to that?
My initial reaction when I heard it was, oh no, not again. The previous Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, caved in on this issue She came under pressure after her last budget.
Yeah.
And I just think can I see a reason for it? Possibly, yes, but I just find it so discouraging overall. I think it's such a narrow policy. One bit of encouragement I have is that the day after that announcement, Treasury officials, senior Treasury officials, wanted to talk to Bira and understand our concerns about that policy. And I got a sense of hope, and I hope I'm not, that isn't misplaced, but a sense of hope that in the budget in October there is the opportunity to put forward constructive arguments for that kind of support. Although we would want more, we would want to push for more targeted support to support independent retailers and other high street businesses who happen to not be pubs. We need a cohesive plan for high streets, not just picking off one or two little sectors that carry a popular vote, maybe.
Okay. So, Surinder, I know your high street, full of independent stores. I can't remember any pubs, clubs, or live music venues on that row of Smethwick. So why do you think these establishments are getting that kind of support while the rest of the high street just waits, Surinder?
I think that hospitality is really struggling, and we have a banqueting hall, and it's been struggling since COVID. Never really took off again, and after that, the cost of living has persuaded people to, shall we say, do their weddings in a smaller way, in smaller venues, invite less numbers, try to cut down the costs. Yes, I can see possibly that's where we are, but it's a step in the right direction. But we definitely need to go much further and address the same sort of thing for the high street.
So, John, in Hereford, does this feel any different than last time, or is this a familiar story that you're hearing?
It is a familiar story, and I think the thing that's most worrying is that before Andy Burnham came in, when he was Prime Minister-elect, he talked about meaningful business rates reform as if he was going to actually overhaul the whole system. But the 20% on pubs already implies that the core of the system will still be in place from April, and it needs fundamental reform, because when you think about how business has changed, you've got businesses like retailers and warehousing and so on that still need physical infrastructure, and they're taking all of the burden on business rates. There's so many other kinds of business, digital businesses, people working from their garages, businesses that have transformed to almost entirely work from home, anyone that's a software company, etc., that they're really not taking their fair share of the burden on business rates. It's only those that need physical infrastructure, physical properties, that are taking their fair share. And so it needs complete reform so that all businesses take a share rather than some businesses taking an enormous burden.
Yeah, so I'm hearing that all three of you obviously think appreciative that he is looking after some kind of sectors, but I think you both, all three of you, are asking for a complete reform of business rates going forward, and I think a fair system for everyone. So, Andrew, if you had 5 minutes with Andy Burnham now, what would Bira be asking for?
I would really want that 5 minutes, not on my own, but I want Andy Burnham to come and meet our board of directors. We have 10 to 12 top quality retailers, experienced business people who trade on the high streets for many years from all around the UK. And I think Mr. Burnham, hearing the concerns from the likes of John, Surinder and others who sit on that board, hearing it from the coalface, would hopefully make him realise why this is such a valuable sector to communities. And it's got a very independent retail is very social, very community orientated, and without it, many communities would suffer for their basic needs, to be honest with you. So he really does need to sit and listen to what John and Surinder and others could say to him in that 5 minutes. In terms of our overarching priorities, I think that we've touched on the cost of doing business and the need to reduce it. I think there's a need to truly level up competition between physical stores and online retailers. John touched on that in what he was saying. But I'd also ask him to give us some stability. He will be the 6 PM during my tenure as CEO for Bira. That's 6 prime ministers in 8 years. And that level of instability is no good for investment or confidence. And he needs to give us now some reassurances that we can have some stability, no matter which way you vote, between now and 29, so that businesses can start to plan and feel as if they've got a chance of thinking about the future without worrying about more internal strife.
Yeah. So, Surinder, I mean, Andrew's answer has been quite comprehensive, but what would make the biggest practical difference to your business if you had a wish?
I think leveling the playing field between online and bricks and mortar would go a long, long way towards covering that. But more importantly, I think I've just come back from Malaysia, and I was pleasantly surprised that how clean the streets were. I was impressed with the cost of living. 5 of us ate out on a really nice meal with drinks for £20. Imagine doing that in UK. It felt really, really safe. And then somebody told me something, and I was shocked. So, Prime Minister Andy Burnham, please take heed of this. Maybe we don't want to go this far, but if anybody commits a crime in Malaysia and they've been convicted in court and they have to go to jail even for a day, it automatically loses their pension rights.
Wow.
I'll let that sink in for a bit. So just imagine, people won't commit crimes very easily. So just imagine what that does to the prison service, to the police service, and therefore the costs of, shall we say, to the state, and therefore the sort of taxes that we have to pay. And couple that with lower energy costs, lower public transportation, which I know Andy Burnham's trying to do. Just imagine what the possibilities are.
Okay, that is quite a radical one, but I suppose it's a step in the direction of reducing crime, isn't it?
It's about reducing crime in a big way, and so far in all the ALPAC meetings that we've had, I've always looked at that we don't have a deterrent that's strong enough to stop people committing crimes in the first place.
Okay, so John, having followed from Surinder's lead, what's top of your list at Philip Morris and Son? What would you be looking for?
I think a lessening of the load, however that comes, whether it's through business rates, through national insurance, whatever it may be, that gives us a chance to survive and thrive. Because I firmly believe that the high street can look after itself if the tax regime allows it to. That if businesses could thrive, then you'd have quality shops taking all of the units rather than some of those that we all know are essentially money laundering frontages, which are very, very common on the high street these days. Yeah. And if you've got quality shops, then they're going to be paying their rates and paying their VAT and all that sort of thing. And because those quality shops are there, you've got that sense of community. And with that comes that pride in the high street, and people will use it and feel safe, and crime will reduce, etc. So all of those things allow a turnaround. That means they don't have to be putting support into the high streets for regeneration plans and so on, because the high street will take care of itself. But by constantly increasing this load, it's not allowing those proper, legitimate, quality businesses to thrive. And so you get this downward spiral that we're in, and just lessen that load and it'll start to look after itself.
Yeah, so kind of lessening the load and fairing up the system for everyone. Andrew, so where do things such as low value import threshold and a kind of online marketplace VAT, where does that sit with you in terms of priority against business rates reform? Have I lost you there, Andrew?
It's very significant, Jeff, because it all fits together. I think it's quite right for the government to challenge us and say, if you want lower rates, how would we fund it? Well, low value item imports, that closing that loophole, adding a tariff to 1 billion products that come into this country every year at the moment and set to increase. If you simply put a £5 tariff on that, you're going to raise £5 billion. The VAT fraud. Now that's out for consultation now. We are very active trying to ensure that the naysayers on that don't disrupt it, that it does go ahead. That fraud alone is probably worth £1 billion extra money to Treasury. So combine that with the low value items, £6.5 billion extra coming into Treasury coffers. And if we wanted a 75% discount on retail, leisure and hospitality businesses, as we had in 24, we would need a third of that. So in many ways, it feels to me as if addressing the low value item loophole, addressing the VAT fraud, using that money to fund high streets so they can thrive and survive, as John's saying, but you also make it less attractive for people shopping online, hopefully, and then drive people more to buying in trusted outlets on high streets.
Because that's really important, because obviously the government relies on its income from rates reform. So you're actually putting forward two proposals that would actually fund and in fact overfund what you're looking for reforms. So that's a really strong.
And then the rest of the money could be put to other uses, which I would say should be linked back to the high street, because these two things, this is about where consumers are shopping and VAT fraud by the sellers selling to their consumers, both of which undermine our legitimate, legal, hard-working businesses on high streets. So the money should come back into high streets, and the rest of it could be used to create better ways of driving shoppers back on the high streets, creating better places, picking up Surinder's point about cleanliness, safety, and all those other issues that we often talk about. So that the money can be made available if this government has got the courage to drive through those sorts of changes.
Okay. So bearing in mind the ideas you've looked at, and I know the presence of LPAC, which is the Legal and Parliamentary Group within Bira, the autumn budget's coming up. In fact, it's been announced, so it's very soon. Realistically, how hopeful are you that the government will listen to some of these ideas and deliver on them?
Well, I think we have to be realistic. We have to be hopeful, and we're already starting on the proposal for what we would like to see in the budget. And we are talking about these elements of business rates and closing those loopholes. But we also want to make sure that things like the neighbourhood policing initiative continues, because we want to see retail crime driven down even further. So we will be pushing it in. I think there are optimistic noises. I think that we're hearing the right messages from the Treasurer, from the Chancellor, from the PM. But we all know that not everything is within their control. And we are very mindful of the fact that what they may want to do, something else could come along and scupper it. What we've got to do is really convince them that this is a must-do project for them. If they really care about high streets, protecting independent retailers and other high street businesses is the safe way to do it. Because John's right, give them a chance to look after where they trade, and those businesses look after it.
Okay, thank you. So Surinder and John, final words to you from you both. What would success actually look like for your businesses in, say, a year's time? What would you be looking for? Surinder, you first.
Reduced crime, reduced energy bills, reduced business rates, a greater variety of shops on the high street. We're seeing too many shops like quick fix barbers and vape shops. I'd like to see a lot more healthier shops on the high streets. Maybe there needs to be a reform in planning as well to help that. But apart from that, mainly, yes, reduce costs for us.
Okay. And John, final word from you on this?
Yeah, similar. I would ideally like Philip Morris & Son to be in a similar position 12 months from now with a turnover that's moving forward and hopefully employing at least the same number of people, if not slightly more, rather than having to reduce headcount to balance the books. Something I would hate to have to do, but with the current pressures that the government is putting on us, something that you have to constantly consider. So if we can have reduction in rates or reduction in national insurance or some other cost help on energy, something like that, anything that just makes it possible for us to look after ourselves would be very welcome. That's what I'd like to see. I'm not expecting all of these things to be done, but if at least something can be done to go the right direction and stop piling more and more things on that go the wrong direction, that would really help.
Okay, thanks, John. I mean, what I found really interesting is that there are a lot of wants that the three of you have asked for, but also Andrew's actually looked at how he could fund those wants and have a bit more surplus. So it's been a really interesting talk. So Andrew Goodacre, Surinder Josan and John Jones, thank you very much for joining me today. But thank you, our audience, for listening to High Street Matters, another original podcast by Bira, the British Independent Retailers Association. Ask any of you to visit bira.co.uk to look at our resources and updates and see how we actually do look to deliver for independent retailers. And we will be back soon with more insights and help on how to help independents thrive. So this was High Street Matters, and thanks for listening. Bye-bye.